Hey guys and girls, welcome to my YouTube channel, My Friendly IT Guys. This is my first video ever, and today we're going to be dismantling that bad boy right there. Gaming computer with an RTX 3070 Ti playing Fortnite at 60 frames per second at the moment. We're going to dismantle that thing into little tiny pieces, put it back together and make it all work, and I'm going to take you on that journey right now. Let's go. Alright, let's take this machine apart. So let's switch cameras. I'll take you on this journey. Right, so here we've got this desktop computer playing Fortnite. We're going to shut it down and we will dismantle this computer into little pieces. Off she goes. Now, as soon as this thing's shut down, I'm just going to relocate the camera and we'll get the screwdrivers out. That's the only tools I'll be using today. Let's power it off. Basically, I'm just unplugging all the cables. We don't need anything plugged in. And there's one desktop computer. Alright, so the only tools I'll be using today, 2 screwdrivers and 1 electric one. Probably won't need the electric one, but it's always handy to have. So all I'm doing right now is just going to take the screws off this glass case. Hopefully you guys can see that quite well. So basically we've got a desktop computer, we've got the video card there, we have a thermal-take CPU fan which basically cools down the CPU, which is the brain of the computer. We've got some RAM chips there, 2 of them. They're also thermal-take brand. We've got a GeForce Gigabyte RTX video card. There's a Corsair power supply in there and 2 Seagate hard drives. So first thing first, we're going to take this back plate off that is holding all the PCI devices in place. It's just 2 screws. Everything is Phillips screws on a computer. With this back plate off, we can now release the video card. So again, that's just 2 little tiny screws, 1 and 2. Right, so we're going to remove this 24-pin power supply cable. This comes straight from the power supply box into the motherboard and makes it work. There is an additional power supply here called the ATX power supply. It is only 8-pin, and that also allows the motherboard to get power. The video card is quite chunky. It's a decent video card. It's about 1 year old now. It's 2022, and it has 2 power cables, 2 8-pin power cables to power it up. And we're going to remove that now. So now that we've removed the 2 screws at the back and the power cables, there is just one little tiny little clip holding that in. Let's see if I can bring you guys in a bit closer. Just there. It's a little clip that if I click it, I'm able to remove the video card just like that. So let's put this camera back up. Barely fits in, and there she is. Now, Gigabyte RTX 3070, 3 fans on it, 1 PCI connector, I guess you can call it, and it basically just slides into this PCI Express slot on the motherboard. Very basic. Pop in, 2 screws, 2 power cables, and that's it. So I'm just going to set that down. Now, one thing to note is if you have just purchased this computer from a computer store in pieces, you would be unwrapping boxes, taking things out, getting instruction manuals, warranty cards, all sorts of things, and you would have a bunch of these electrostatic sheets, I call them, I guess, the bags. So I'm just going to lay down the video card on one of these to just protect it and not get any static electricity from the carpet, which could destroy the video card very quickly. Right, so the next thing is we've got this cable here. This is another, this cable here basically is controlling the lights, all the fancy LED lights that are on the computer box, which I can remove, I'm pretty sure, like so. And there's 3 more thermal take fans that spin around, and basically they have a control module up here that's been installed, and it connects into the motherboard and just allows everything to turn on when the computer is turned on. So the next thing I'm going to remove, I'll get one of these electrostatic bags. We've got the memory, the RAM. So these are just chips. There's there's one little clip that holds this in place. You just have to flick it open and your memory chip pops out. It can only go in one way. You can't get it in the wrong way. So that makes it easy to install. And we're just going to click on this little clip, remove that, and that's both the memory chips gone. Now, the next thing we're going to remove is, we've got this CPU fan here, and it's got this little tiny connection here. Now, it's 3 pins, and the motherboard has, it's going to be very hard to show you, but the motherboard actually has this little tiny connector right there, and it's the only 3-pin connector on the motherboard, and it actually has a label there that says CPU fan. So that's where that plugs in. And there is one clip here. It's kind of like a metal band that goes right across, and we're just going to remove that. It's a bit tricky to get off because it's not meant to be removed. There it goes. And I do have a cable here that's holding onto it. So let's see if I can fix that up. So what we're going to do is flip the case this way, remove this back plate, the motherboard, computer box, take that off. Let's see if we can release this. Yep. Perfect. Put it back down again. And there you go. There is your CPU fan. Now, the CPU fan, yes, it does just sit directly on the CPU, but it does have this special coating there, which I call concrete. It's definitely not concrete. It's just a protective thermal kind of paste, and we're going to apply some new paste on that when we fit the CPU fan on top of that CPU. Alright, so now that we've got the CPU fan off, we're going to remove some of the other components. We can't get the CPU out just yet because there's this plastic ring that is actually part of the CPU fan to hold that onto the motherboard, and it's getting in the way of removing the CPU. It's just this one little metal hook that you just swing open and the CPU comes out, and it's very, very straightforward, but we'll get to that in a moment. Okay, so the next thing is, let's have a look at the power supply. So we've got a couple of screws that we just need to undo. Now it's going to be quite important not to mix up the screws. They are interchangeable, they will pretty much fit together, but it's probably just a good idea just to keep the same screws that we're keeping the same components in place aside, so that you know which ones to use when we start reassembling this thing. Okay. Now this is a modular power supply. Hopefully you can see that, you might be able to. But basically it's got all of these connections here, and they just disconnect. With the exception of one, it looks like a 24 pin for the motherboard. There we go. There is one power supply, a little bit of dust, it's been kept quite clean. And basically you can see on the back of the power supply there are some connectors there, and they depend on, the ones you will use I guess depends on what components you've actually got in your computer, including video card or any additional peripheral devices. So we'll put that aside. And last thing here, we've got, let's unplug these from the motherboard as well. Remove some of these. Now there are these connectors here. One, they've got a little metal clip that you just have to push down to actually unplug them. And these cables come all the way over here. They plug into each of the hard drives that we've got here. Okay, so 2 SATA cables. They go directly from the hard drives into the motherboard, connecting them, making them work. And then these, I think, just slide out. So these have a power cable here. And then we have 1 and 2. And so here we've got 2 Kingston Slim hard drives. I think they're both, well, one of them's 256, one's terabyte. Very basic power cable connects into there. It's just a wider version of a SATA cable. SATA cable connects there, and there you go. That's your hard drives there. So if you would have purchased some hard drives, they would have come in a small box and 2 cables, and that's it. Now this is that control module that I mentioned before, which controls all of the LED lights on the front of this case. So that has 1 cable that basically is this one here. Start to see now that it's starting to look quite empty inside this computer. Let's just do a full removal of everything, just so that you guys can see the computer looking completely empty. And just disconnect that. Hopefully I know what I'm doing. Of course I do. And I'll be able to rebuild this thing back in once it's all apart. So we're going to remove this cable here, which is basically the audio. So at the top of this case there are some microphones, headphone jack and some USB ports. They also connect via this circuit board underneath here, and that circuit board basically has a couple of cables that plug directly into the motherboard to make them functional, I guess. And what else do we have here? So that's those. They would have actually come as part of the case. So this case would have come in a box, and this would have, I did not screw that in, so that was already there, and the cables were literally just dangling, and I just had to tidy them up and, you know, slide them through it. I think the last thing, I've got a couple more cables here. Yeah, these are going to be the tricky ones that I'm going to be showing you guys. Okay, so we will need to look at the motherboard manual if we want to reconnect these, but basically here we've got these 2 little pins. These are always the most difficult things to install when you're building a computer. So this says power SW, power switch, and positive, negative are reversible. It doesn't matter, it just completes a circuit, so it doesn't matter which way you plug it in. And this cable again goes to this little module up here and basically enables the power button that's on top of the computer case to work. We then have 2 more. Now these do have a positive and negative. This camera is going to be tricky to show you, but I'll remove that. So on the top here, closest to the SATA, we have power LED plus and power LED negative, and then we've also got the hard drive LED. So these are the little LEDs that flash up and up if the computer is doing work, if the hard drive is processing data, or if the computer is just in general turned on. So now we're at the last phase. I'll put this camera back up here. Okay. Just 1 more cable plugged in here, and what will you connect to? Something. I don't know what that one does. It's part of this module again for the LED lights. So. Okay, the next thing is we're going to remove the motherboard. Make sure there's nothing in the way there. Keep those screws separate. There's probably quite a few holding this in. Probably about 8. 2. 3, 4, 5, 6, nothing there. Yes, this one. Okay, now that was actually a very long screw. I don't remember putting that one in. Most of the screws, as you can see, are quite little, and then this one is 4 times the length, if not longer. So that releases the motherboard. Oh no, I am wrong. There's one more of these long screws here. Okay, and there we go, motherboard. It does come with this metal plate that goes on the back just to put little labels against all of the connections on the motherboard. Okay, and the last thing we want to do is, let's see if we can remove this plastic thing here, which is housing for the CPU fan. Now it looks like it has, I might need a flathead screwdriver actually. Okay, so hopefully they just pop out. They do. I don't think you need a flathead. You could have used Phillips if you could slide it under there. Okay. So we will actually remove these 4 things. And now I think we just need to squeeze these. Yep. Squeeze, push through, and I think it will now pop out. Look at that. So basically this plastic thing is what the CPU fan sits in, so that it's nice and snug against the CPU. So now to get the CPU itself out, there is just this lever. I'm going to push it down, pull it in that direction, clean up some of this dust. Open this one up, and now this is the brain of the computer. This is the expensive part, other than the graphics card, I guess. But there we have it. There is the CPU. And this is, now that the thermal paste is on there, we can't read what it is, but it's a i9, I believe, or i7, I think. Oh, here you go. It is an Intel i7 9700 LGA series CPU. So in today's video we covered taking a desktop computer apart into little tiny pieces. In my next video we're going to put all of these pieces back together and build a gaming machine. Now I'm going to teach you all of the steps required. We're going to go the extra mile. We're going to look at manuals. We're going to look at all the things you need to know to give you the confidence to do the same yourself, so that you can go to a computer store, tell them you want to build a custom PC, you want to basically get all the components yourself and put them all together, and then you'll have the confidence to build this thing yourself at home. It's easy. You got this. So please like and subscribe, hit that notification button, and I'll see you next time. See you guys.